Hello, and welcome to our presentation about the latest on Medicaid legislation in the Budget Reconciliation Bill and a presentation on Advocacy 101, Building Relationships in Congress. In January, when we began to understand how plans were emerging in Congress to make tax cuts permanent in the expiring Tax Cuts and Jobs Act and to use Medicaid as a pay-for, we understood this would have a significant impact on the population that LSA works with across the board, from children and families to people with disabilities and older adults. We moved into the development of Medicaid messaging to support all our member organizations, and we strive to do two things with this messaging. Our aim is to position Medicaid in the context of the work of our members by ensuring we are both, one, defending Medicaid from potential cuts, and two, working to strengthen Medicaid given the innovative efforts happening across our faith-based, trusted, and community-centered network. With ongoing shifts related to Medicaid, including to managed care, value-based payment, or other alternative payment approaches, and a move toward addressing not just healthcare, but also the broader health-related social needs of individuals and families, we seek to ensure that the work of our members is positioned for continued success and leadership. So where do efforts in Congress stand now specific to Medicaid? As you know, Congress is moving through the budget reconciliation process, a streamlined process meant to move legislation in an expedited fashion because it only requires a small majority of votes to pass. That's especially important in the Senate. This kind of legislation is not subject to a filibuster, which would require a supermajority to pass the legislation. The House passed their bill in May, includes the biggest cuts to Medicaid ever, roughly $715 billion, and adds over $2 trillion to the deficit. Now the action has moved to the Senate, which is crafting its own version of the bill as we speak. So let's take a look at the timeline from here. On May 22nd, the House passed their budget reconciliation package, and the Senate plans to have their version of a budget reconciliation bill passed before the July 4th break. That means now, this week, Senate leadership and other senators are shaping their version of the bill and negotiating changes. Their target date is before June 30th, because that's when the July 4th district work period, also known as recess, begins. Further negotiations between the House and the Senate and final passage are expected later this summer. So please plan to put the resources and the techniques we review today into early action in order to defend Medicaid from these significant cuts. And that includes, please use our action alert and our tools to reach out to your own lawmakers. And Senate Majority Leader John Thune is on record stating the Senate is looking for $600 billion in cuts to Medicaid, and he continues to plan to pass their version of the bill before July 4th. So we want to offer, in addition to the techniques we're about to show, some resources to join us and get involved. First, the entire toolkit for our messaging platform, Here We Stand, for people, for care, for Medicaid. A great free resource for news and information that's nonpartisan and free, well-respected, the Kaiser Health News website listed here. And finally, our second Strengthening Families issue brief entitled Innovating Care for Children and Families Through Community Partnerships that Leverage Medicaid Managed Care. So how can we adapt and learn how to build relationships with lawmakers so that we could be sure of having an impact on these issues? So first, I'll just put this through the lens of Medicaid, since that's the major issue we're dealing with right now. And our key targets that we've identified listed here, we also have a link for you to use to visit. And certainly you would also contact your own members of Congress based on your geographic location. The folks listed here are on committees with jurisdiction over Medicaid issues. And we're focusing on the majority, the Republicans, because they're the ones leading the show right now. Also, some newly elected legislators who may need more education on Medicaid issues. They may be in states or districts that are purple, meaning they need to fight a little bit harder to get reelected. And so they're especially in a position to be persuaded. So how do you start if you're building relationships with elected officials? First, you want to connect with their staff members. Everyone wants a meeting with the senator or with the member of the House, but staffers are the foot in the door and also the ones doing the bulk of the work. So we can help you identify the right person working on the issue that you're concerned about, but there's also information on our website, and we have a link within the presentation about contacting the offices for your member of Congress and asking for those staff people. You can email them, you can call by phone. And when you connect with them, as you're asking for a meeting or opportunity to speak, what can you offer them? You can offer them opportunities to speak at events or visit your sites. You can share with them information about the number of jobs you offer to the community or the people served in their district or state. You can talk about overlapping issues of interest. Perhaps that lawmaker has a specific personal interest in helping people with disabilities, and that's what your organization does. And then finally, and probably most importantly, lawmaker education, meaning where do you and your organization have expertise that they need as they're developing legislation, preparing for a vote, et cetera? What works and what doesn't on the ground? What can you tell them? And what can you ask of them? Certainly, you can approach them with policy changes or concerns, things that are going to have an impact on you. You can also talk about appropriations requests, meaning specific funding requests or help with navigating grant applications. You can also seek help approaching government agencies, or if you're having a problem communicating with an agency and you need a little bit of help getting a return phone call or connecting with the right person, your lawmakers' offices can help with that. They can't put a thumb on the scale. They can't direct an agency to take or not take a specific action, but they can certainly help get you in the door and talking to the right person. So once you've connected and you found the right person and decided why you're meeting, how do you set up the meeting? Certainly be flexible and offer options. Be cognizant of floor schedules and recesses, those district work periods we talked about. And you can view those on the House's official webpage, which is just www.house.gov, and look for legislative activity, or www.senate.gov, tentative floor schedule. We can also help with that on our team and let you know. And be sure to talk about having a meeting in person or otherwise. Now the phone or Zoom and other video platforms really give an opportunity to have more meetings than you might have in the past, because you can have one meeting in a day and not have to travel to Washington, D.C. to do so. And certainly be ready and ask for meetings in their district and state offices as well. And our website offers you a place to put in your address, identify your lawmakers, and see where those district and state offices are. We also suggest having grouped meetings, meaning connect with other members of the LSA network to request a joint meeting with your mutual senator or House member, or even others in your professional network that have the same issues and have the same lawmakers. Asking for a joint meeting is often more productive because they can kill a number of birds with one stone. And then certainly don't forget other venues, town halls, site visits, et cetera. So how do you conduct meetings? What should you expect? Be short and sweet. You probably will book a meeting for a half hour, but if you can keep it to 15 minutes and get your points in, so much the better. You may be switched to a different staffer at the last minute. The person who handles the issue that you're there to talk about may have been pulled into a committee hearing. The congressman or woman may have needed to speak with them. It's not a reflection on the meeting, it's a reflection on the realities of their schedules. And then if you are in person and you're here in Washington, D.C., just a note that you may meet in a hallway or a foyer or another small space, just because of the nature of the size of their offices. So to prepare, we suggest you look up key details in our congressional directory. Again, this is on our website, and you can identify committees and other information about the member of Congress. But make sure you prep your elevator speech. Why are you there? What would help the clients? What do they want decision makers to know? Plan a brief outline of the meeting and assign roles for the people who are there. Who's going to make the introductions, who's going to give the quick background of what your organization does, who's going to make the ask or share the specific concern for the meeting. and frame that in the context of what you've learned about the lawmaker. Are they personally interested in something specific? Is their committee role directly related to your concern? Who should attend? Staff of your organization, people who do the work on a daily basis, or the folks running the organization, and possibly clients. There's different tactics you can use here. Have them share personal stories. Congressional staff want to hear from these people and from you, and hearing personal stories of impacts are very important and significant. And just make sure that you know who's going to do what when you're there. And what do you bring with you or share? One pagers, pieces of paper about who you are and what you do. If you have a pamphlet or pictures, information on number of jobs and people served. And then what could they refer people to you for? What kinds of services? If they often have constituents coming in asking for help, can they refer them to you to get some of that help? Finally, if you have a short, concise summary of your ask, what you're there for, that's helpful. So just a quick example, and these are all linked here. We have right now a one-pager about Medicaid and why it's important, our fact sheet about our Medicaid messaging campaign, and then finally, a document from our coalition called Modern Medicaid Alliance. They have these for every congressional district and state with details about the impact of Medicaid in that area. Other ideas, as I said, a brochure describing your program, or if you have a fact sheet about the legislation that you support or oppose. Consider sending electronic versions also, or instead, you may want to send that after the meeting as a follow-up point. And to that note, as you follow up, send a thank you email that reiterates the key points you made and has links to any of those materials that you shared or attachments. Keep any promises you made, meaning if you said, oh, I'll send you that data point, I don't know it off the top of my head, make sure you come back with that. And then report back to us on your meeting. We are making an effort to really track all of our inroads with members of Congress. We have a link here to our quick form, you know, who are you, what organization, which member of Congress, and which of their staff people did you meet with, a quick sentence or two, what you talked about, hit send, and it'll come back to our database. And then we know that we've made inroads with that member of Congress, thanks to you. Now, as we talk about maintaining relationships, a couple quick notes. Do become a trusted resource. You know, work on what you need to build and strengthen relationships and make it intentional, not just when you need something. You know, make a point of going in and saying, thank you for doing X or Y, or we wanted to update you about our work in the community and this new program that we have. And you're not asking for something, but you're giving them useful information. You need these durable relationships for the good times, but also the bad times. And having that creation of a durable, trusted resource relationship will really help. Share important updates about your work. Invite them to do site visits. Also offer to provide testimony at hearings. If you're an expert on something by virtue of your work, they may need that as someone to come and testify at a specific committee hearing. Also, officials like to be recognized for their work. So do you have a photo or a story for their newsletter when they came to visit that they could use? On the flip side, don't become a pen pal. Don't meet frequently, ask to meet frequently for no real purpose, just because you feel like you have to keep asking for meetings. Don't add them to daily newsletters if they don't ask to have that. They get a lot of emails, so you don't want to just become noise. You want to become a trusted resource and a durable relationship. And then finally, just don't forget to reach out to us as you do this work. We're very happy to speak with you and help direct you to the right member of Congress, to help you with messaging materials, to help you with getting set up for what you should say and when you should have the meetings. We want to empower you to develop these relationships yourselves, but we're always here to help you get on the right path to do that. So thank you so much. We appreciate all that you do, and we look forward to continuing to work with you.
Sorry, I'm like a deer in headlights sometimes with technology. But thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this meeting. I'm really excited to once again just share more about the campaign and the whys and why it's so important right now. But I really wanted to focus this particular presentation on sort of the ripple effect and how local voices can, build and become make a national impact. So I wanted to start with a quote that really speaks to me, because it captures, the heart of what we've been talking about. Because, we often think that change comes from, change has to be massive from the start, right? Efforts have to be massive, but actually it's the opposite. Change starts to creep and then it leaps, right? The tipping point is just this invisible threshold where small efforts like calls to legislators, like sharing on social media, it might not go viral, but it could be one of the things that moves someone else to call their senator or talk to their congregation. And all of these little efforts add up to a movement. Um, so as Sarah mentioned, right now it's, why now, we know that as, the bill, has moved forward, that millions can lose their coverage and it's not going to affect one group. Every community will feel this. And we know that the work requirements are advancing as well. And at the same time, because of everything that's happening with the protests and ICE raids and, all of these things that sort of take up the space in media, a lot of people aren't paying attention. Fewer people understand what's coming with these cuts, and so really, it's our job to inform them. And the good news is that there's still time to make a difference. It's not too late. This chart actually shows. This is from Five Calls, which is an app that sort of automates calling Congress. And it shows that surprisingly many of the calls are coming from conservative leaning states. So that tells us two things, that one, um, people are engaged. There's concern across the board, and when people are informed, they start to respond. So I think it's just I know that we're in mid-June and it feels like everything is sort of insurmountable at this point, but it's not. So why Lutheran Services in America? Why should we be part of this conversation? And honestly, why I think we should be leading this conversation is because Lutheran Services in America and all the members are very trusted. The network is rooted in care and community, not politics or profit. You're on the front lines every day. We've talked about storytelling before, so you know what it means when housing, aging services, disability care, mental health support, all of those services, what happens when they go away. As nonprofit providers also, the fact that every dollar that you receive goes back into care and staffing community impact, it gives, that you have the credibility to be part of this conversation. We also have lots of examples of what is working. Our members are using Medicaid to drive smarter, more effective care. We know there's pilot programs, and so making sure that story is told is really important in this moment. And then also, we can't forget the moral clarity right now. This public conversation, it's divisive, but we know that the work that you do is really grounded in service and shared values, and that's exactly why it's important for Lutheran Services in America and all of its members to be part of this conversation. And you might be thinking, I'm just one person. I have my, my work life. How can I, make a difference? I know that, the time frame right now, it just feels, like I said, insurmountable. But, you can make an impact right now. The headline of this slide is it's not magic, it's momentum. And, when we think about the law of the few, right, it only takes a small group of committed people to get something moving, especially when they're connected, like Lutheran Services in America members. They're trusted. And the third, which is, we know this is true for you, you're willing to speak on this. And so, I wanted to talk about the stickiness factor because if the message is clear, emotional, easy to remember, which is, for those of you who have seen the tools and the campaign, we know that, that's what we aimed to build for you so that the messages could be remembered and the message could travel. So, and then finally, just the power of context, right? The message hits harder when it shows up in the right moment and in the right place, whether it's a town hall or a Facebook post or a hallway conversation with a board member. I think it's just important to remember that your voice matters more than you think, because where and how you use it really creates the conditions for others to listen, and not only listen, but also feel empowered to also use their voice. So just the final word on this, I'll say it clearly, you don't have to know the policy inside out. Really what we've tried to highlight is that what matters most is your proximity to the work, right? The stories, the local impact, that knowledge about what happens when Medicaid goes away or when programs go away. That storytelling is what moves people. And so if you can speak with confidence and conviction and compassion, that's really enough. And so the tools that we built are designed to help you do exactly that. So we know that we're speaking to lawmakers and their staff, as Sarah mentioned, but we're also talking to media because media is where public understanding and misunderstanding takes shape. And we know that Medicaid is complicated, it's often misrepresented. And a lot of times the people who are on it are either left out of the story or misrepresented in the story. That's why, it's so important for us to show up in local news, in opinion pages, social media. That's how we inform people, number one, how we influence public sentiment and really push back against the harmful narratives that we know have, been pervasive for many, many years. And while, it's important to speak to policymakers, we're also speaking to the general public. We're speaking to community leaders, to people of faith, to nonprofit and civic partners. And we're speaking to Medicaid recipients themselves because they see their stories reflected in the public conversation, which builds trust. And again, that storytelling element is really important. So every time you contribute to that conversation, whether it's in media, or online or in person, you're shaping, how people think about Medicaid. And right now, of course, we know that it could not be more important. So going back to that unifying message that we had shared, when we launched this campaign, we developed this early on because we really wanted that, one voice across the organization, across the members, that we could share on through all channels, whether it was media or social media. The phrase itself, "Here we stand for people, for care, for Medicaid." It's a nod to Lutheran history, but we chose it because it still fits today. It really reflects a moment when someone stood their ground in the face of pressure, not with outrage, but with conviction. And we launched it to really bring consistency to everything that we say and do, not just internally, but in meetings, when we talk to media, and when we have those community conversations. And again, that it was really inspired by by Lutheran heritage, to not only signal moral clarity and the truth about the issue, but also it was designed to be repeatable and easy to remember. That what I mentioned, the stickiness factor. And more importantly, it ties everything together. So every talking point, every story, every resource connects back up to this and ladders up to this idea. So we know that, I was happy to hear that, the members are using these, but, let's go over them again in case, you haven't gotten around to using them. I just wanted to go over them and, make sure that you know what's available to you so that you can use them if you have a meeting or you're responding to a question or you're posting online. You know what's there. So first, you've got your talking points and message pillars, and these are really designed to outline those key ideas that we want to reinforce, and give you a strong starting place for any conversation. The FAQ and reactive Q&A, that's really designed to help you respond to those tough questions or pushback, especially around things like fraud. And as we know, work requirements is a major topic, so that's what that reactive Q&A is for. We've got op-ed templates, for those of you who have, local newspapers. We really wanted to make it easy for you to take that and make it your own, add a story that you know about, add, those anecdotes that, you're close to. But you can take that and also make it something else. An op-ed can become a letter to the editor. That op-ed can become a blog post. As long as you make it local, you can take the language in that op-ed and use it in many, many ways. The social media guide has, pre-written posts, examples of how to talk about, this campaign on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and just how to customize customize those posts for your audience. There's a legislative meeting guide, which gives you, step-by-step support for preparing for a meeting with a lawmaker and their staff. There's also story collection tools. There's a story collection tool so that you can help, your staff or, or your support staff find those stories if you don't have them readily available. It gives you an idea of how to find the story, how to vet the story, and how to use it as well. We've also got holding statements in case your organization is contacted by media or there's something that needs sort of a rapid response. Those are there as well. And then we've got that one sheet and campaign logo that you can leave behind. So really, there's just a lot of things that you can use that you can modify to use differently if you have other scenarios that we haven't thought of. I think that the tools that we have there are really, really flexible. So, as long as we're, using the headlines and using those message pillars and what you're using, what you're doing is rooted in those message pillars, you're fine to modify all of those for whatever purpose you may need. And I really just wanted to hit on this that, the key piece here is storytelling. Like this is really, the centerpiece, not only of communications, but also advocacy. The story makes the issue real. It really cuts through the noise and brings a policy, and the impacts of a change to a policy down to the level of human experience. The general audience, when you're talking, for example, to a reporter, the reporter might know about Medicaid. The reporter might be knowledgeable about Medicaid and what the policy entails, but the general public may not be. And so what storytelling does, it helps you connect with those people who, their eyes glaze over when they hear, about lawmakers or politics. That human element, they'll remember that. And that goes the same for lawmakers. Lawmakers, they're like the general public. They might not react or retain stats, but they're going to remember names and moments and stories, that's why a lot of them also use it in their work, because illustrating what policy means on the human level is what makes people understand what it means. So when you share a story, make sure that you're just keeping it focused on the person, talk about the real person, name the challenge they were facing, explain how Medicaid helped them or how losing coverage will make things worse for them. That sense of urgency and why it's important to so to keep Medicaid. So, and then, you can easily tie it back to one of our message pillars. That's what really gives a story structure and strength. And it doesn't need to be dramatic. It just needs to be real. So how do you apply the tools in real life? I mean, these are just some examples. So if you're going to a town hall, bring those talking points so you can organize your thoughts, bring a one sheet just so you can sort of guide, the conversation. If you're meeting a lawmaker or their staff, use the message pillar and a real story. You don't have to use all the message pillars at once. I know, the previous conversation and the question was, how can I organize, when I have so many messages? You absolutely don't have to use all the messages. Use the overarching idea, about how this will impact everyone. The cost to value message, how this is an investment in communities. There are through lines. Yes, there's different elements, housing, all of those things, but the through line is the impact. So using the message pillars to tell a real story really goes a long way. And then if you see a false claim online, for example, use the Q&A, respond with using that Q&A, and tag, tag other members, tag other staff members, all of that, like, share, repost, is always important. So you've got those tools to help you have those conversations online. And if you need content ideas, there's, the social toolkit is there as well to help you do that. But there's so many actions that you can take. It doesn't have to be something that's time consuming or difficult. So fact plus value plus story equals impact. That's the formula when we think about what sticks and what people pay attention to. Facts plus value plus story. Facts make your message credible, right? Those statistics. Values make it resonate, and stories make it stick. So every time you get into a conversation where you're advocating for Medicaid, aim to combine these elements. And you might think, you know what, my time is really limited. I don't have a lot of time to dedicate to this, but even a few minutes can really help to move this work forward. So if you have 5 minutes, you can share a post or comment on one. That really keeps, the messages that we want to share in the conversation. With 10 minutes, you could email your elected official or send a story to someone who can help amplify it, or you can create content on LinkedIn. If you have 30 minutes, you can take the op-ed and make it your own and send to a local newspaper, or you can write a letter to the editor. And if you have a full hour, you can host a quick info session, host a webinar, record a short video, or help collect stories from your team. You really don't need a big platform or a lot of time, just just the desire to take a step. And every action really helps build that visibility and pressure where it counts. And then, we've been doing media trainings, and we talked about how to be your own publicist, but, just reminder of how easy it is to, to advocate for Medicaid within the media. So if you see a Medicaid article in your local paper, call or email the reporter, offer to share your perspective or connect them with someone in your network. If you see a TV news segment on Medicaid, reach out to the station and offer to be interviewed for a follow-up. If you have a strong story from your organization or community, send it to your elected official or media contact. That may spark, an interest to do a story. And then use social media to tag reporters, lawmakers, or outlets when you share stories. And really, I think the ultimate, thing that I wanted to share as part of all of these slides is that you can do this. You do the work day in and day out, and, it's just a matter of taking that extra step to share it with everybody. And finally, the call to action is to take these next, we have 2 weeks, a little bit over 2 weeks. Use your voice. If we don't speak, others are speaking. So, if we don't do it, others will. And then, I think just choose 1 or 2 actions you'll take this month, whether it's this, social media piece or reaching out to media. Every action counts. And when we all take an action, we build something bigger than what any of us can do alone. So thank you, and I will open it up to questions. If there's any questions on any of the tools or any of the messaging or any other questions on how we can help you do this work in the next few weeks.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. We appreciate it. And I just personally, I really like it. Helped for me to think of it when you show the 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, 60 minutes, because I often have to think that way, like, this is how much time I have, what can I accomplish? And so I think that's really powerful to show that you can do that. Does anyone else on the call have any questions or comments, or people that might have dipped into this messaging and been using it? Anyone want to share? So to breathe a minute. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Sylvia. And as with everything else that we shared today, we'll have a link to, and we put it in the chat as well. And I think you all, I hope, have already seen this at least once by now, but our messaging resources for the Here We Stand campaign. And we really hope you make use of them. We think they're really powerful. We really are very grateful and lucky to have the work of Sylvia and her team on this. And with that, I just want to say first, thank you for participating, but also remember our reminder, our next in this session, in this series, is coming up on July 17th. If you've registered for these, it should be a recurring event for you, but please save that on your calendar as a recurring event. We have them, apart from this session being off schedule because of the holiday on the 19th, we try to have these on the third Thursday of the month. So you can save that once you get the registration confirmation on your calendar. And you'll also receive a follow-up email from us with the slides, with materials and links from this webinar, and more information about those upcoming webinars. I know so far on the 17th, we have a speaker lined up whose work focuses on helping groups identify federal grants to apply for and how they can engage and tap into those funds, which is obviously more challenging than ever right now. So we're grateful to have her with us. And thank you so much. And I'll give it one last, if anyone has a last closing question, comment. I did teachers say questions, comments, criticisms, complaints. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of your day. Thank you so much for joining us. Bye-bye.